some sauce?
Scene 1, Apple, take 1.
What is up, everybody? You know, it's been a long time since I've done anything like this, but today we're going to be making candles. And right here I've got some, well, my dog apparently thinks it's pretty cool. Inside here we've got some candle wick. We also end up having like this clay stuff. It's a mold sealer, as it says right here. Now, all my materials are very old. In fact, Pete Candle Supply, the people that I had gotten this from years ago, they don't even exist anymore. Okay, but we're going to make a few different types of candles today. Oh, I need to put that away. That's my oil paint. This is in my craft room where I do all of my painting and everything like that. But I haven't done anything with it in a long time. So we can make a pillar candle, and we're going to talk a little bit about the waxes and stuff like that. But you have to get a mold, okay, for pillars. This also is another kind of pillar candle, okay, another mold, one right here. These guys are indispensable. This is what you put your wick in, and you can put it, and you can do this with container candles. You feed it through here, and then that way, when the wax sets up, it stays straight. But anyway, what you're going to need, depending on the candles you're going to be making, if you're going to be doing pillar candles, in other words, ones that don't have a container, you're going to need some molds, okay? These help, but you don't necessarily need them. You can use a pencil or a popsicle stick or whatever else to support the wick. You're going to need a thermometer. That's for the wax. If you are going to want them to be colored and you are going to want them to be scented, you're going to end up having to get fragrances like these right here. Mountain pine. I have tons of these. Fudge brownie. These are old. Pina colada. You're going to be needing a bunch of stuff like that. If you want to color them, you're going to end up, this is probably deteriorated, but you're going to end up having to get colors as well. You can get them in a solid form, like a little brick of wax, or you can get them liquid, and I usually use liquid. I got tons of these in here, so I'm gonna be doing some pretty cool stuff. Got all sorts of stuff in here though. This right here, if you add this to your wax, and it's a container, not a container candle, but it's a pillar candle, you can give this like this malting, they call it, and it kind of breaks up the color and makes it kind of look cool. We might add a little bit of that to some of the stuff here. If you're doing container candles, you should get pre-made wicks where they've got the base already on them, and then plus the wick. There's some wicks that have a very, very thin wire on the inside that helps them stay straight up. I generally will use those, okay? Not all wicks have that though. And then you're going to find wicks of different size, and depending on the size of the container, the kind of wax, and a lot of things, that's kind of how you determine the thickness of the wick, okay? So you'll be needing to kind of do a little research on that. All of the stuff I have is pretty much made for all of the things that I had purchased in the past. I think the last time I made candles was probably somewhere between 8 and 10 years ago. Okay. Containers. Well, you can use mason jars. Okay. Any type of glass container that can handle a little bit of heat, you're going to be good with. These are some old containers that had some of my old candles in them, and my nephew, who's a stoner, decided to, I guess, try to hide the smell of weed while he was staying with me in the room, so he burned these. But I can reuse these. Or you can order brand new containers like this, okay? And once again, these are probably 12 years old, maybe longer. I remember buying these. I drove up to LA to buy those, okay? But you need something that can handle the heat, and it's usually a good idea to have something that's going to end up also having a lid to put on there, and that's going to end up blowing the candle out, right? So prevents smoke, robs it of oxygen. That's how I do it anyway. You're going to need some type of wax, Okay, so this wax right here, this is a scented pillar blend. This has already been mixed. So they've already put additives inside this, so that way I don't have to do it. Okay, so all I have to do is just melt this, add whatever color, add whatever scent, I'm good to go. We'll talk a little bit about additives in a minute. This right here is a soy wax that is made for container candles. This came in a big box. I don't know if you can see how, and that's how much I've used over the years, but this right here is enough for quite a few candles still. And for the containers, this is what I'm going to be using. This is a soy wax that has already been, the additives have already been added to it, okay? All I have to do is add the color and the scent to this. And you can buy them like this where it's already been added. Okay, so this right here, I believe is, yeah, this is Vibar. This you would end up adding to something like paraffin or a wax. You can make your own wax, like you get paraffin, make some beeswax and stuff with it. You can add stearic acid to it, or you can do Vibar and stuff. And this ends up helping it give off a better scent, a stronger scent. It changes the consistency of it a little bit. And additives do stuff like that. Okay, you can add things like Crisco to paraffin, right? Paraffin you can just get at the store, at Walmart, wherever. But you can even add a little bit of Crisco to it to change the consistency of it, right? You can add things like Vibar to it, which, once again, anywhere that you buy the stuff for your candles, you're going to be able to find additives. And that will also end up changing the consistency and the quality of the wax. You're going to need some type of container to melt the wax in. A lot of times people will suggest that you do this in a double boiler. I've never done it in a double boiler. Okay, what I do is I use a hot plate and I have it on the lowest setting, and that's worked for me. Okay, so, but you need some type of container, and you're going to need somewhere that you can melt the wax that is in a safe spot. You do not want to heat the wax up a lot because you don't want it to reach a flash point. You don't want it to burn. You don't want it to boil. You don't want anything like that going on. You want to slowly melt it, and that's one of the reasons why they suggest that you use a double boiler, and it's safer. But I found that a hot plate on the lowest temperature does just fine. Okay, and then also it's very messy, so make sure you end up having something that's going to protect the floor or the counter or something like that, because this wax does have a tendency to get all over the place. Also, if you're going to be doing anything with this, you want to make sure that you've got a fire extinguisher or a wet towel or something nearby, just in case there is some type of flame during the time that you're making it, that you can put it out safely. Never walk away from this. Pay close attention. You're dealing with fire, you're dealing with hot oil. This is a recipe for disaster. So I'm thinking we'll start with some pillar candles, okay? So what we want to do is we're going to unwrap some of this pillar blend. One of the things that you have to kind of keep in mind when you're doing candles is shrinkage. The wax likes to shrink a lot when it cools, and it can create a problem. But additives can help prevent that. So what we want to do is we want to kind of break this up into pieces that we can fit inside our container, filling up our molds. So this has been setting for so long. It even looks like it kind of melted because of a certain level of heat that we've had happen here. So I'm going to see if I can chop some of this up and then see if I can break it. A lot of times this stuff is pretty hard. But there we go. Okay, so this is one chunk. This is going to end up filling at least one mold. Okay, so put the big side down. There we go, that's one. This is one of the knives that I made. This should be enough for our pillar candles. Okay, so now I'm going to put this on the hot plate on the low temperature, the lowest setting, and just it's going to take a while for it to melt, but it's the safest way to go. You can spray a release agent inside here if you want to. It will help have the wax come out a little bit later. I'll tell you right now, candle making can get kind of pricey when you start getting into it. When I was doing this years and years and years ago, it became almost addictive, constantly making new candles and buying new stuff for them, and you know, it can get kind of pricey. And of course, if you're a guy like me, it's kind of out of character to be somebody that looks like you make candles, you know. It's like, what are you, girls make candles, you know. And you will catch grief if you're a dude. You're going to end up catching grief. People will question your sexuality and all sorts of stuff. But I'll tell you what, everybody that ends up smelling the candle that judged you, they're always like, dude, hook me up with a few of those. So everybody likes scented candles, and there's nothing wrong with you learning how to do this, because why in the hell would you want to go out and buy something like a Yankee candle when you can make your own with almost any scent that you want, any color that you want, any size that you want for cheaper, and it's better. There's actually a few tricks you can do when it comes to pillar candles, pillar type candles. One of them is you can put ice inside here, pour the wax, okay? Let it set up, let all of the ice melt, and then you end up pouring all the water out. And then now you have cavities that you can fill up with a second color of wax, or a second color of wax and a second scent. So you might have one that's chocolate, and then you make that brown and obviously smell like fudge, and then you end up making a green one. You pour it in there and that smells like mint, right? Chocolate mint. See, that's some smart shit right there. Anyway, we have a braided wick right here, and what we're going to do is we're going to take this, we're going to measure out a little bit for each one, and we're going to cut it. So from here we have this, it's like a putty, and this seals off the bottom of the container, so that way wax does not spill out of it. Now we need some way to keep this where it is straight up and down, and that is where one of these guys comes into play. Wrap this kind of around this little thing right here, okay? Center it. And now we're golden. Okay, so these are ready. And this is something I cannot emphasize enough. When you pour these, make sure there's something on the bottom of them that can catch any wax, just in case those seals don't work. I've had it where the seals don't work, and the next thing you know, it's just spraying out hot wax everywhere. So have some sacrificial bowl or bucket or something nearby so you can pour these. Give it a few minutes, make sure it's not going to break the seal, and then you can move it somewhere. We're going to go ahead and let that wax heat up, and that's going to take a while. It might take an hour for that wax to melt. When it gets to the right temperature, that's when we pour it. And it's really important that when you're melting your wax, you get it to the right temperature. And that's going to end up also helping it prevent shrinkage. So we'll get into that in just a little bit. Okay, so this is almost completely melted now. Okay, and I have my thermometer in here, and I'm looking right now to see what the temperature is. It's a little warm, okay? So we're going to end up turning this actually off. It's about 170, but I don't want it to be much more than about 140, 150. If I get this way hot, you have to remember when things get hot, they expand. When things get cold, they contract. And we don't want this to be too hot for a few reasons. A, if we put any scents inside there, it's going to dissipate the scents. That's no good. Two, when we end up pouring this into our molds, they're going to end up shrinking a lot, and the top of it will have this dip in there. And we want to try to avoid that if possible. Okay, so you want to keep this at a fairly low temperature. Basically, as low as you can get it where it stays liquid. That's perfect. Now, the first set of candles I'm going to be making will be for my wife's boss. And so what we'll end up doing is we're going to end up making something apple, okay? So first thing, right here I've got my red dye. This will symbolize, or this will be the red. This is really old. Oh, I'm surprised it still works, okay? And then we're going to put a few drops inside here, okay? Let me get a chopstick or something to stir that up with. How do you know if this is going to look right? Well, what you can do is you can take this and you can put it on a piece of paper, a couple of drops, and then you look at it to see what it looks like when it's dry, and that is going to end up basically kind of telling you what this is going to look like. And of course, at first it'll soak through, but if I take this and I allow a few drops to kind of sit there and let it dry, it's going to end up kind of telling me what the color of this is going to be after it hardens. And looking at that, that's actually not too bad. I'm going to put a couple more things of red in here, because that right there is not too bad. I'm looking for something a little different though. Okay, so we'll put that to the side and wait for that to set up. So right here, I'm going to be putting warm apple pie, and generally per pound you put an ounce, okay? There's not much left in here. We're going to see how far this takes us though, okay? I'm going to take some cinnamon and balsam, okay? We're going to pour a little bit of that in here too. This is called Applejack and Peel. I'm going to put a little bit of that in there. That way it has a little bit more of an apple smell. So right now I can smell the scents. It's not overpowering, but it's there. It's nice and subtle, okay? And we're going to move some of this stuff out of the way. Pouring slowly because we don't know if it's going to leak out of the bottom, okay? Looks like we dodged a bullet on that one. Okay. I have some remaining inside here. I'm going to let it sit in here because I might need it if this starts to shrink. And I want to make sure that I can fill that up if it shrinks. Okay? And now we have to wait hours for that to set up. So when putting the wicks into the containers, what I do is I use a glue gun. And I'll attach that so the base of this is attached to the glass. And it can come out. You know, if you grab some pliers or something, just grab and pull, it'll pop off. But when you're pouring the wax, it prevents that from like shifting up or anything along those lines. So that's what I do, is I use the glue gun. But as you can see here, we got a lot of shrinkage. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a heat gun at low, and I'm going to go around the outside of this and just let this melt the wax and kind of fill up that area that has shrunk. Okay, so the first time around, that will take care of this. We're going to let it harden again, and it'll shrink a little bit more. But every time that we do it, it'll shrink less and less. On these, we need to put something underneath it so that they can actually stay level during the time that we're doing it, so we can let gravity do its work. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to pick this up, and I'm going to put 2 nickels under every corner, and then we can use that as our spacers. Okay. Now, a lot of times you can reserve wax and then you just pour it in there. I find just doing this works just as good, and you don't have to reserve wax and wait for it to solidify, then heat it back up and all that other nonsense. You can just kind of come in here and melt all this and just let gravity do what it needs to do. So over here I've got some wax melting for the container candles. This wax is definitely a lot softer. It's got a slight yellow tint because I had already done a batch and there was a little residual in there, but it's such a small amount that it really won't show up. And for the scent that we are going to be doing, this is going to work out just fine anyway. So we're pretty close to having all of this melted, okay? And typically when it's about something like this, I'll turn the hot plate off because there's enough residual heat that will go ahead and melt that. I can check this out. We're at a really good temperature right now. It's 150 degrees. At this point, we're going to add our scent, and this is pina colada. Give it one more stir. If you wanted to add any dyes or anything to it, you could right now. And then very carefully this is not going to shrink as much. As far as these guys go, we're going to wait a little bit longer. We're going to see how much shrinkage there is. Hit it again with the heat gun if necessary. Okay, so it's been a few hours, and you can see that the using the heat gun, it kept doing it over and over, and it eventually flattened these and took the dips out. It also significantly ended up decreasing the sides of the candle, because as things get hot, they expand, right? So we ended up losing that much, and that's okay. Generally, the wax will start shrinking a little bit more around the outside perimeter, and if you just get these and you kind of turn it, the candle will slide out, okay, generally. So here we have one of them, and as I was mentioning before, if this is not setting level, I can take this, rub it over a hot piece of aluminum foil that's on a pan like this, and it'll melt, and then we can make it set flat. But this is actually setting kind of flat right here, so we can call this good. Here's the second one. Okay. This one just comes right out. Look at that. Okay, so I've got a piece of aluminum foil on a baking sheet. We're going to turn this on the lowest setting this can go. Okay, you do not want to overheat this, especially if it's got Teflon on it. Okay, around 600 degrees, when you heat one of these things up, it'll actually start giving off a toxic gas from the Teflon. So you don't want to do that. Okay, what we're going to do, turn this on the lowest setting. We'll need to kind of move around a little bit right here on this side to level it. This one is pretty much level already. I just want the bottom to be a little bit more consistent with the other two candles. And there we go, guys. We've got our custom pillar candles made now. And even with them not lit, you can smell the scents that I had put in there. So I went ahead and I made 3 different kinds. I've got the pina colada here, and then this wax on the outside I can clean up. And that definitely smells like pina colada. Okay, this right here is a tangerine vanilla. Smells like a 50-50 bar, for those that remember that. And this one I mixed up special here. This is a mixture of a bunch of things. I ended up using a bunch of different types of flower scents, but I also ended up mixing things in there like cotton candy and vanilla and things like that to sweeten it up. So that way it smells kind of feminine, right? Almost like a perfume, but something that's not overpowering, something that smells like a sweet garden almost, okay? So that's this one. But there you go, guys. That's how you go about making some homemade candles. And there's a lot of different additives that you can add. There's a lot of different scents. There's a lot of different techniques. It's one of those things that if you start getting into candle making, oh my God, you're going to be spending a lot of time and a lot of money and doing a lot of stuff, because it gets addicting after a while. Something as simple as a candle. And I've got about 20 or 30 candles that I've got stashed also in my cabinet, where I keep also my kerosene lamps and stuff like that. Because hey, if you ever have a blackout, and out here in California we have brownouts and blackouts sometimes, it's nice to have a bunch of candles and kerosene lamps and stuff around. And don't forget, candles are romantic, even though I have no idea what that means. My wife said, oh, we should have some candles, they're romantic. So I went and I got her Roman candles. I thought they were romantic. She didn't like them too much, especially when I set them off in the kitchen. But anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this video. You learned a little something. And until next time, guys, talk to you later.